Hi everyone, I'm Lou Nickus and I'm going to be going over the PBIS Behavior Expectations Flowchart. So this flowchart is really just meant to be one spot where you can find anything that you might need in establishing and supporting student behaviors. So on the left side you see the flowchart, starting with actually setting the behavior expectations, then identifying whatever problems you might see, and then dealing with those problem behaviors. On the right side, we really just have a bunch of tools that you might use along the way while you're problem solving. The top right is more of just policies. This one is actually just a link to clarify staff versus office managed behaviors. A lot of those you know it when you see it, but it might be helpful for that clarity. We also have the away for the day policy, the tardy policy, and just how to submit a referral. So all of those are really linked on that first slide. Nothing else is actually linked on here. You click on it and then it takes you to that slide. And then you can actually have access to the links here. So in this first box, the top section of the flowchart, we have the behavior matrix. So this basically describes in really simple language how we're expecting students to behave in these different parts of our world. And then together, as a class, you're going to set your own classroom expectations on the left side here. So those are the expectations that we want to set. And this green box is about actually teaching those expectations. So we have the PBIS lessons linked there. That's just going to take you to the folder of the PBIS lessons that we want to teach in the first few weeks and then reestablish as we go. And then these other ones are really just preventative measures that you might put into your class if you feel like you need them. Once you've taught all these expectations, you've set them best you can, there are going to be problems. So this is about identifying a specific problem behavior that you want to deal with. I do want to point out how objective these are. The word defiance is not written anywhere in here. Each of these is a very specific behavior that you're going to give a very specific logical consequence to. Those should match each other. If any of these aren't totally clear, on the left side you see this link. That basically just defines each of those different behaviors. So you've identified a problem. Now you want to assign a logical consequence that matches that behavior. So you can click on this. This is going to take you to the different options, or at least some of the options that you might need for a classroom consequence. But actually, before I get into each of those, I'm just going to go over the general flow of this. So you're going to assign a logical consequence. You try something. Let's say it doesn't work. The concern continues. You try another consequence. You try something else, including a restorative conversation or some sort of reflection that makes them explicitly and deliberately think about what they did and how it affects other people. You may also need to document this. This is where the IDT data tool comes in. Shane is going to make a video about that later, but the IDT data tool is going to be useful for documenting each of these and really communicating with your team about those behaviors that you're seeing and the interventions that you're providing for those behaviors. This is actually just the exact same link as this. It's going to take you to that red slide. The restorative conversation link takes you to a specific Google Doc that we can use as a restorative conversation. Additionally, if you don't want to use that, on this red slide, there's other reflection forms linked in here. This is just a folder, which is just a collection of reflection forms that you might want to use also. In this step, they should be specifically thinking about what problem behavior led them to this. At this point, it's becoming a chronic behavior. You've already given a consequence, you're giving a second consequence. This is where they really need to think about what they're doing so that it doesn't become a chronic behavior that just disrupts everything from here on out. If it does continue, you need to contact home. There just needs to be a second level of support coming in at this point because it doesn't seem like it's getting solved between the teacher and the student. This definitely needs to be communicated and documented with the team through that IDT data tool, which again, you're going to get more details on later. That's going to be communicated through there. And at this point, it's probably going to be brought to the team level because most likely, if you're seeing this problem in your class, other people are seeing it in their classes, so you can start dealing with this as a team. If it persists through that, then you're going to need to bring in admin to deal with it as a tier 2 or a tier 3 intervention. Hopefully, that concern is fixed and you get to acknowledge this positive behavior. Obviously, you don't teach all the students that you run into in a day. So if you do need to communicate with other teachers, that's really where the IDT tool comes in handy. This link takes you to that same document where you can communicate with that student's teachers about what problem behavior you're seeing and what interventions you might have already implemented. So I'm hoping that this process is more clear and supportive than last year. I thought last year's flowchart kind of just distinguished between office and staff managed behaviors and then just let you deal with those staff managed behaviors. But hopefully this clarity and the supports on the next couple slides makes this process a lot easier. Speaking of those supports, just going through a couple of these links. Some of these are just articles about like what this looks like in a classroom, reinforcing, reminding, redirecting. That's just an article about how to implement that in your classroom. Some of these are more specific to Liberty, like the reflection folder is actually a folder. It's a shared folder between Liberty teachers. The call family link is the support that we're going to see for making phone calls home. So some of these links are specific to Liberty, like the away for the day form and the tardy form. Some of them are more just general on how to implement that in your classroom. Similar kind of thing here. You can look through these on your own. I don't think I need to go through these each. The teacher-student lunch conferences and after-school conferences, they're going to be managed by the IDTs. So those are all the tools that you're provided. In addition to that, I added just examples at the end just because some of these situations might not be that clear. It's a little bit more dynamic than this flowchart might suggest. This kind of makes it seem like it's going to all be streamlined and the concern is going to be fixed. Some of these situations are much more muddy than that. So I provided some examples about what someone or what I would do in those variety of situations and how I'd use the tools from the flowchart and the IDT data tool. You can read those if you want. If you feel like you understand how to deal with those situations on your own, then you should be good to go. I hope this helps.